That's my problem. So they're offering something that the government, they're saying their program, ancestry based, lineage based reparations, is something that's going to help us get reparations. It is the furthest thing that's going to help us to get reparations. The furthest thing that's going to help us get reparations, because the Constitution says that you can't have those arguments to get reparations on race or anything like that. So then, so they either they know it or they're just ignorant, but both things lead to the same thing. But now what they're trying to say is we're the ones who's on top of reparations. We're the ones, but yet they're not on any of the committees. They can barely testify. They haven't written anything. They haven't written out one thing that you could say they're cited. But they have a large audience of people who are naive and impoverished and blaming the immigrants, the 6 million immigrants, right? Instead of finding a way in which uh, they could uh, work with those numbers to do something positive in our communities. So my whole thing is, I mean, with your help and everybody else's help, is to tell our people that they are scamming because their methodology, their talking points can't be granted in the Constitution. Right? So then it's not about reparations. It's simply about hate speech to other black people. But then when it comes to the Latino people, they're very quiet about it. They mention them, but they're not going after the Cubans. The Cubans that eat their food. Cubans will find out who their names, where they live at, and the Cubans will take. They're not going after the Dominicans, and they're certainly not going after the Mexicans, and definitely not the Venezuelans. What they're doing is spending a lot of time on people who are not even asking for reparations, and reparations is something that we won't see. We may not see in the next 10, 15 years. We may see partial reparations in cities and counties, where cities and counties and states can can offer reparations for their own population, for the people, the residents that are living there, right? But not throughout the union, right? And so uh, are we going to be accountable and at least pulling them on the table and saying, talk your talk, let's hear it, let's see facts, let's see it in the let's see it in law. And what are you doing? What's your role in doing it? Social boosting? You scamming. So I got a lot of people mad at me. I got even former friends of mine that are mad at me. But I always ask them the question: show me, based on your wording, how anything that you can make an argument that could be that an award of reparations can be given. And they can't do it. And they want to, so what they want to do is hide my voice, right? And then find people who kind of partially agree with black people in America taking care of black people. I got that. But then the onus is, well, why are we doing it anyway? Why are we as black people taking care of business? Why can't black people, we got states that hate each other. DC hates New York for good reason, right? For good reason, for the underground reason, right? For the underground reason. So we got Texas, people in Texas hating other states, black people in other states hating black people from other states. Oh, we don't like the New Yorkers. New Yorker, the New Yorkers don't like the Southerners. Like, we petty. Hey Mika, how you doing? So
Hey, Reggie.
why don't we take care our business of unification within America instead of worrying about 6 million 6 million that's spread out through all of the states where black people live. That's ridiculous. That's scapegoating. That's what Hitler did. That's what Mussolini did. So you have black infighting. Over what? Over some, over a check, right? If we were unified, we could take care of our own. Why scapegoat instead of building? Booker T. Washington, none of our people are perfect, but he quietly built a printing press that was national. He quietly built institutions quietly. After he died and the success, white supremacists went to take it all back. They attacked Black Wall Street. Things. These are the endeavors that Booker T. Washington quietly envisioned. And when we got profitable, they came and they took it all back. They burnt down 1,400 houses, left 10,000 black folks homeless, right? Destroyed everything economic that we had built in Tulsa, right? Out of our own bootstraps, right? And white folks took it all back, right? But at least they build. Now we got black disunity. So not only do we have FBA now attack, watch this, they're not only attacking the black immigrants, they're attacking Pan-Africanists, they're attacking black leaders in the past, long buried, and then they're even now attacking black elected officials who are the ones who are supposed to be able to help grant reparations. So they're attacking black people that don't want to follow under their self-hate ideology. So I'll stop. I'll listen to y'all. Time for me to listen.
Bro, Reggie, I had a question for you.
Hey, hi.
Yeah, this Mongo. I got a question for you. Can you speak to the lobbyists? A lobbyist would be important to get reparations. Wouldn't you? Would you agree?
Okay. Yes. Okay. So there
Can you
are.
speak to that, please? Can you speak to that, please, for me, Reggie, please? I appreciate it if you do.
So a lobbyist is going to lobby a congressperson, usually a congressperson or a senate person, to to take a matter and try to make it a bill, right? And so that
You mean bribe? You mean bribe? Lobby is bribing. Go ahead.
no,
Finish.
lobbying means
Yes. Go
lobby,
ahead.
lobbying means to take. I'm not saying some lobbyists are not bribed, but what I'm saying the process is a lobbyist takes a matter, right? And usually they work in firms. And so they take a certain amount, they take some money, a lot, sometimes a lot of money. And what they do is they're going to talk to a number of elected officials to try, if it's a congressional uh, action, they're going to lobby the Congress to get a group of people that's going to take a matter and put it on the floor so that Congress can vote on it, so that to move it along through the houses to the Senate and then for the president, right? Um, and so usually if you now sometimes a congressman himself will not use a lobbyist or will pay a lobbyist to help him contact other people and other elected officials and try to work things out, right? But the lobbyists are usually firms that take a large amount of money to contact and notify people and try to move along to put something on the floor of the house, right? So the issue is on the FBAs, right? The FBAs, the problem is uh, They can't put anything because it's constitutionally prohibited. That type of work. Now, Yvette Cornell, she was a former lobbyist, right? That's ADOS. So she knows the process. So since she was a former lobbyist, she would do it herself. Well, what she ultimately decided to do was go to the courts. So she took a matter to the courts with Tone, and they sued Harvard and Harvard Kennedy Center for something, uh, or some comments that they made, right? However, unfortunately, uh, September 15th is the date in which the courts is going to decide, wait for them to dismiss it themselves or to decide. So at least Yvette Cornell and Tone, they know the process. The FBA people, they're grassroots people. They don't know the process. They don't know law. They're not the ones to get anything done. What they want to do is mobilize like Black Lives Matter. But Black Lives Matter had funding from Soros. What they want to do is make this a kind of a social media type uh, Cash App, Patreon. Where does that money go to? Where does that money go to? Does that money actually go to help them, or it goes into the pockets for people to keep yapping? So, Mongo, on the issue of lobbying, the FBAs are they can't lobby because they're asking for something that elected officials can't get behind.
So you feel the same way about
Thank you for that. Thank you for that answer, brother Reggie. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
What's up, brother Reggie? You feel the same way about ADOS too?
No, ADOS is actually smarter.
Okay, what's the difference between the two?
Well, I think ADOS has a fund, an organization, right? And and so that they're doing it much more legally. On the issue of the American descendants of slavery, issue is that they're asking for something that can't be granted neither, because they're asking for lineage and the how can I say, ancestry, right? The problem with ADOS is that they don't understand that if anything were to be granted on descendancies, American descendants of slavery, well, how many white people are American descendants of slaves? A lot, a lot. And so then the pie that they think would be given would also be given to white people. And what about now the issue of black people who actually had slaves? A lot, right? Because if you were a child of a slave master and you was granted uh, freedom and some land, you needed people to work that land. So where'd you get the people? It wasn't your families. You went to the slave market, right? And they should get reparations, right? And they were slavers, right? So it can't be that. It has to be something where people were harmed. So now we the better position, the winning position that has been winning has been harm based. Now that's why, for example, now President Trump, right? What he's doing is he's going to Smithsonian and library, and he's trying to reduce what people see as the harm, right? So he wants to scrub museums or talking about slavery. He just did a whole thing. We're talking too much about the bad things on slavery. Well, um, he's the president, he has his opinion, but the fact of the matter is that museums, libraries, uh, these are the places that can best show the harm, right? That's where we would get our data from.
Right.
So then why? Because he has conservative groups talking to us. talking to him, and they know that if we could show harm, we'd be better, and we'd be in a better position of repair, right? So, look, I mean, that's just how politics go. Sometimes there's good things with a president, sometimes there's bad things with a president. Uh, with Trump, look, there are a lot of bad things about the president, but there are certain things about good things about the president, uh, and so you have to analyze what's good and bad and what is your what you can get out of it, right? So a lot of people will go with the president on immigration issues because he's not wrong on immigration. These people walked across the border and now they're challenging white power. They can 65 million immigrants and now challenge by district white folks. That is a threat, right? Working on doing something about that, and that has nothing to do with us. Now we get in with our little chatty patty self, right? But we talk about jobs, they're taking away, Latinos are taking away our jobs. No, Latinos are creating jobs. They hire Latinos. They don't hire us. That's the facts. You got 65 million, many of them are entrepreneurs. They converted their bad business, their legal business into legal storefronts. And in those storefronts, they hire themselves. They do not hire us. We're just looking at we're looking at attacking black people, but we're not looking at why the border issue is a problem. Now Democrats, they lost the election. They failed America on the border. Right? That's one of the large reasons why Trump is the president of the United States. Because Biden and I don't know too much about Harris's politics because she was following her she was following Biden, so she's part of it. But the fact of the matter is, the voters decided that the border was an issue. We decided that her skin color was an issue, but America decided that this 65 million population of people in this country who will be citizens, children will be citizens, will change the voting population of the United States forever. That is a big issue for all Americans, especially Americans who have been here for 20, 30 years. There, so now you see many more Latino congressmen. Uh, you know, and so you see them coming up. You see them coming up as governor candidates. Their interest is not black people. So black people have a right to talk about the immigration, and we should talk about the immigration. But reparations is not the thing that's going to fix that. Reparations is not going to fix the immigration crisis. That's a whole nother policy. So
Well,
yes.
do you agree that they do you think that, how can I say this? Do you think that ADOS and FBA, rather than am I making noodles or something? Do you think that ADOS or FBA, rather than maybe going at one or going at the other, maybe putting them together as one being a cultural arm, one being a legal arm, would be a good strategy, or not?
No, because
Why
both
not?
of their strategies are wrong because it's ancestral and lineage based.
But ADOS does do harm. They do some harm based work. I think their latest they have a latest proposal in Amazon, and from the ADOS Foundation. Aston says it was just published. It can be found on Amazon, and it's harm based. So maybe they're listening to the people, or listening to people that are saying maybe they should go in a different direction. They're kind of moving to harm based.
Exactly. And why? Because they are basically a lobby group, right? So they're
Right.
gonna go to where it's winning. But fundamentally, fundamentally in the past, they was uh, American descendants, ancestry, genealogy of slavery, right? So now they can change, but they have a foundation. They have a legal entity, right? They can change and they should change their name because their name hurts them, right? Now, the FBA groups of people, no, they're all lineage based, no policy, no writings, no court actions, no participation on the committees. What they're trying to do is stand behind the people that's doing the work and push them off the cliff by manipulating them to take an issue that can't be granted. So I think that ADOS, if they transition, would be viable, but I also think there are reparation organizations like NARC, right? Like the Institute of the Black World. Those are think tanks. I think that they've been doing this stuff for a long time, and they're the ones who started listening to Attorney Ogletree, and because it was Attorney Ogletree who studied reparations and made the case for harm-based reparations,
Mm-hmm.
not genealogy, not ancestry. He talked about ill-gotten gains. He talked about causes of action that could not be dismissed by uh, how can I state statute of limitations, right? And he made that case, and it took a while for people to start really going back and reading Ogletree's work. So I've been reading Ogletree's work for a long, long time. Um, and so my positions are always based on harm based, not on your great great grandmama who you call Miss Sue. You don't know her real name, right? Most people don't know their they don't even know the harm on their own grandmas and grandpas and great and parents. They only know their situation. So it can't be. They don't know the harm. They don't know how their family, how they got into these projects, what their parents tried to do, get loans and were denied. Uh, uh, how can I say the racism in the job market, what their daddies and moms went through when there were no jobs. They don't have any affidavits or records of that, right? So harm basis is why I know FBA is scamming, because they're doing ancestry based, and you can't just give it on ancestry. Because I'm telling you, there's a lot of white folks that are descendants of slaves.
Right. So is there anybody in here that's FBA? Because I know Chef was saying he was FBA. I thought he was capping, honestly, but um, he said that he was FBA.
Yeah, I'm FBA.
Yeah, that's cap. So you gonna let her? So you agree with everything Reggie's saying? Because I'm trying to figure out, like, I mean, while it's cool to listen to some of the stuff that's being said, I'm trying to figure out. I know we got people that's FBA in here, and it seems like y'all agreeing, or y'all just not trying to engage or something. I would think.
No, no, that's like you saying you are African American and somebody start talking about issues in the African American community. If it's true, you gonna be like, yeah, we do that.
Okay, no, I get
Yeah,
you. So you ain't. So
that
you.
is
So you
wild
just.
that we do that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you got a point there. You know what I mean? You're a Christian, but you say yo, son, you start talking about something wild that happened in the
Yeah,
church.
I
You ain't gonna say
I get out the car.
you ain't gonna say you ain't a Christian because
No,
there's wild church people out here.
no, I agree. I agree. I have no argument with that. It's just the it's a visceral response when Reggie talks about FBA, and I wish I had that. There were people in here that would respond, but I think it's going to be very difficult to find people that are published on that subject from FBA, because it seems to me FBA is more cultural. It's like a cultural thing.
It's a cult. It's a cult.
Oh, well, you said that.
Yes, it is.
It's a cult.
Okay.
It's a feel good cult. Let's bang on the Africans.
So is Black Egypt. So is Black Egypt.
No,
that's a topic.
I'm scholarly. See, I'm scholarly on
So is Black Egypt.
I'm not asking anybody to join me. I never did. I wrote a paper.
I'm with you, Reggie. No, Reggie, you said that Black people should sue for reparations from the Black church. Yes. Remember you said that? See, that's why I don't listen to nothing you say afterwards. Because you did a whole presentation. So everybody here can think all that you just said sound good. But I remember.
Did I lose? Did I lose? Did I lose?
Listen, once you said that, bro, like,
I had a whole
I was done with you on anything reparations.
Wait, could you flesh that out? What did you say?
Yourself.
I had
you
a
said
whole
you should sue for reparations from the Black church?
Yes. Yes.
When did you do this, Ray? When did you do this? I want to go watch this. When did you do this?
Yeah, it's under that other channel's paywall. He privatized all of the debates.
Oh, okay. I got you.
You got to request for him to put it up.
No, I ain't doing that. Well, just can you, if you don't mind, can you give me about 3 minutes on your premise, and then I'm assuming you went into the methodology of it, how. So, what was your argument on why Black people should sue the Black church for reparations, if you don't mind?
No, it would be my pleasure. So I debated Pastor Bennett on the issue. So it was a debate between me and another scholar, right? The issue is looking at the early Black church as they were trying, Black people were trying to survive in America. It was beneficial in a strategy to accept Christianity, right? Not that they believed in Christianity, because in the beginning, all they had, as they were enslaved, and the early Christians did not want them to read, and separated them because they were pagans. So through the activism of people involved in the in that strategy of abolition, early abolition, they began to adopt the faith of the slave master. And the slave master, prior to that, they used Deuteronomy and a lot of things to say why pagans should be enslaved, right? But nevertheless, these people said, well, we are godly people and we will accept the Lord Jesus Christ, and that if we accept the Lord Jesus Christ, then you have to look at it a different way, or at least separate us from the others. So early Black Christianity began a process where now that they are Christianizing the Black folks on the plantations, and then later will do missionary work in Africa. Well, that is the process, not through the European directly, but through our own cultural, that we begin to distance ourselves from Africa and African people and African culture. And it was a long process. Even Nat Turner's family, if you read his autobiography, they had visions. They talked to ancestors, right? It was a long process because people would not give up their old ways. But then you had scholar Black Christians that emerged that, in fact, uh, uh, were very articulate, very informed, and ultimately engaged the culture. So even you have the poet Phyllis Wheatley, that she has a great poem about pagans and Africans, about leaving the African ways. And so the fact of the matter is, okay, that was in there, that maybe for survival, that was their strategy. But nevertheless, our community began to religiously believe in a story that is a great story, but was not from our own culture. And it was pressure from institutions that forced this. And that institution was the early Black church. So they don't owe money per se. I might have just, um, I'm trying to win a debate, but they owe restitution to our community because that is something that they did. So that's the 3-minute part of it. And then if anybody gets the video, then we can examine it. But the fact of the matter is, a group of elite, because the Christian ministry, they were more elite Black folks. It consisted of the mulattoes, some freed Black people who were um, very close to the European. And then many of our revolutions in America was halted because of Black Christians informing on those revolutions to their counterparts. And again, a lot of these wealthy or more entitled Black folks had slaves themselves. So much so that when the Confederate, when the Union and Confederate split, the Confederate Army was composed of lots of Black folks that actually joined the Confederate movement, as well as Indians, Native Americans, and fought on the Confederate side. So reparations is always looked at with money, but the Black church has to acknowledge how our people were de-Africanized, and it was a major part of making us, what do you call, Americans without the benefits of America.
What about the Black church's role in liberation? Do you? Because I'm trying to figure out, when you do reparations, you go oppressor or oppressed, and I know the white supremacy will be the overall oppressor, but if the guilty party, and just like making a thought that the guilty party would be white supremacy, and I think the Black churches would also, even if they were in the guilty aspect per se, wouldn't we be skipping um, the actual oppressor, right? The actual guilty party, if we're going towards the Black churches? Because I know even
No,
with the elitism, no.
no.
So you would say the Black churches are more guilty than white supremacy?
No. I think that what I think I would look at is the whole process and know that the white church who gave us the slave Bible, you do know that there was a separate Bible called the slave
Yeah,
Bible,
yeah, yeah.
right? Okay. So it would be, of course, the oppressor who owes us the most repair, the Black church, uh, those institutions that participated in this have to be accountable. Now,
Hmm.
they are us, and so there's a certain amount of things that we can weigh in as far as a strategy of liberation, and uh, uh, I don't have a problem with that, but to not make them deal with uh, what they did do would uh, that's our own house cleaning. We have to make our own people accountable.
Hmm.
So people were just so upset with me that I said something about the Black church, right? And that
Hmm.
was holy ground. And I'm like, I'm a historian. I have facts on it. So let's just deal with the facts, and then put the facts on the table, and then we'll decide how we want to what the black church's role will be now to fix, if anything, that they could fix.
Because on a like if I was doing like a scale, right?
Yes.
And I was saying, as far as guilt, well, I say the black church has guilt, yes. But but on that list, there would be so many people in front of them, it would almost be like, in order to sue the black church for reparations, we'd be skipping past so many. I mean, I'm pretty sure you agree, but we'd be skipping so many different groups to get to the black church, as far as like in their roles of anger. I mean, you skipping federal government, state government, the banks, the corporations, white churches specifically, the universities who benefited from the slave labor and the investments. You'd be skipping the corporations in the North, specifically with the textiles, who profited from this. While saying slavery was bad, they were also profiting from the slave labor and the products. And then even when a friend of mine came up with a weird theory too about Irish and Italians when they started benefiting from their exclusion of not being black, going into the white, them not being Irish or Italian, not being a minority, but going into the whiteness. And they weren't even architects of the slavery. And then you would probably get to you being a realm of the black church. Because even in the black church's role in fixing the situation, I would say, you got the app. I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting
Well, no, that's
idea.
why I had the debate, because fundamentally is okay. First of all, Christianity is the same for whites and blacks. Is it or is it not?
What do you mean?
Christianity,
Today?
the belief of Christianity is the same for whites and blacks.
Oh yeah, the belief. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so now once we know that, so once you become a Christian, white and black, you believe in the same thing. Right? So white Christianity has had a huge role in dividing people based on classes, right? And groups. That's from the early Roman Church to the Catholic, to the Protestant, to the Presbyterian.
Logic, mute your mic.
They've had different roles in dividing white people, and there's been a lot of bloodshed even in the white church. Agree or disagree? Okay. So then there's this case of black slaveholders in Christianity. Free blacks who are largely became slaveholders in Christianity. How did they get that class? How did they become that class? Became that class because of their relationship with their close relationship with the slave master, and that early Americans were Christians, white Christians. And so it's a black class moving closer to survival culture with the white Christians, right? And then other things fall in dividing the classes: the darker Africans, the Africans that are just arriving, the Africans here who have admixed with the European in their ways, and then there become class struggles between those. Agree or disagree, or am I?
When you say black slaveholders, you mean be specific? Be specific about that. What you mean by that? Black slaveholders here?
Right. Okay. So yes. So let me go and look up something.
Okay.
Okay. Give me a second. Okay. So I want to give you. Actually, want to give you some facts. In Wikipedia, the first black slaveholder is in Wikipedia, and I'm just going to try to pull his name up for you.
Okay. Logic, you're going to have to debate Reggie.
Okay,
I'm sick of him.
Okay.
Anthony Johnson?
I think it could be Anthony Johnson.
I'm sick of
he's an Angolan from Virginia.
Yes.
Okay. Sick of this one.
Right. So So he's an Angola, right? So I know
Mm-hmm.
many of y'all don't like Queen Nzinga in Angola and the Congo, right? So he actually he's not the first, but his case was that his slave, right, uh, Sue Johnson's descendants. Well, there was a court case between I think Casser, right, and Johnson. So I'm just trying to pull it up. His name is Anthony Johnson. So you're right about that. And
Mm-hmm.
so early 1620s, that's how early this was, right? Slave traders captured a man who would later be named as Anthony Johnson. So that's his Christian name, his
Mm-hmm.
Angolan name, right? And he worked for a merchant in the Virginia Company. Virginia Company is known for slavery. He became a Catholic, right? He sailed to Virginia in 1621 aboard.
Yeah, Virginia, that's them yacht boys. Go ahead, tell us about them.
Yeah, I want to
Yeah,
hear about this.
I am a Virginia boy. I was born in Virginia, right?
Yacht boy. Go ahead.
So then, now he says historians have some dispute of whether he was Antonio, later known as Anthony Johnson, as the census Antonius, right? So he became Anthony, but he was probably Antonius, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that he um, ultimately he involved himself in slavery. Um, uh, so okay, so the restaurant Johnson worked on Good Friday.
But now
Okay,
you're using him for, just so we're clear, you're using him to show um black participation in slavery like it was the same as white participation in slavery.
well, no, well, yes and no. One is that he was a Christian,
Uh-huh.
right? He had a close ties to the Virginia Company. He became
Mm-hmm.
a Catholic,
Okay.
and he enslaved other black people, right? So the reason why I was talking about him was to show how the process begins, right? How the connection begins. So he's entitled because he's connected to the Virginia Company, right?
Uh-huh.
Now, and he's a Catholic, so he's elite. He begins to have slaves. His slave now is suing him in court. That's how we know about him, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's in fact how we know about it. And that was just one example. That doesn't condemn the black church. It does. It does show what the process was. Now,
If I
yes.
told you he had less than 5 slaves, and at any given time it was more like 3, he wouldn't be like the white people, because even after they the white the white plantation owners took the land from his descendants. So he was just like a temporary outlier, more than like a, I wouldn't, like, I'm saying, like, I'm talking about like an actual guy with land and plantations. This seems like just a guy with a couple of slaves,
Oh,
and
but it goes
then
further. So
okay,
we
yeah, go
now
ahead.
we're going. So now we're going down the pattern of looking at the first case in the very early part of the 1620s, right? That's very
Mm-hmm.
early. This is not even American slavery, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then we get further along with
4 million slaves.
with
So
the
we're
other.
talking about 4 million slaves, and we're only talking about 1,200 black slave owners in the history of that whole institution here in the United States. That that's not even something to speak of. To act like we were, yeah, it's crazy.
Actually,
It's a
actually,
crazy act. It's a crazy. It's a crazy
actually,
argument.
no, actually, the fact of the matter is that we had, if you say um, only 1,200 and there was more, right? But if the fact of the matter is that because they were Christian, they were entitled, and that they in fact had slaves, right? And that then you have black church leaders, right? Um, Separating black people from their African ancestry to be slaves, it is certainly something to examine and talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something that just can't be uh, overlooked because you want to protect the institution, right?
No, but
There's
would you call it an anomaly though, just off the numbers alone? Because even in the thousands of black slave owners that did participate, you can't deny that. We both in agreement there. Um, some of those slave owners, those black slave owners, it wasn't for slavery; it was to protect their families from going into slavery, so they became slave owners too.
Exactly.
So there's
well,
other like
that's
there's
the
just a lot of. I would
rumor.
just say it's an anomaly more than
Well,
it would
that's
be.
the rumor,
A,
but scholars have actually examined that to see if that in fact was in fact true. And so the problem is that's something comfortable for us to say, but
Mhm.
how many black people, how large was the black family at that time? And if you had, let's say 10, 20 acres or 30 acres, right? What the mere fact that you
That's
protected
right.
your
Let's get
own,
these niggas, Reggie. Reggie, was Queen Nzinga a slaver?
Oh God.
well, that's a separate topic, but yeah, she participated in slavery.
My man. All right, now go
Oh,
get
okay,
them
yeah,
other niggas,
yeah.
man. I
Hey,
don't have no
that
problem with
was.
you
I wish
going
I had
after
a stables
anybody else.
fight. That
Yeah.
was easy. That was easy. Appreciate you for being honest. Thanks.
Right. So, but we what we have to do is look at the overall circumstances. Um, uh, and if you want me to talk, I mean, at some point we can have a conversation on black slavery before the European. We can do that, in Arab slavery before the European. We can do that. My
So,
my issue is my issue is I just try to begin the process of letting you know that okay, so let me read this part, right? Okay. There is this other character, and then when I get to his because okay, his name was Stanley, right? So let me just read you part. He did not get rich by holding his labors. One of his white neighbors described him as a hard taskmaster who fed and clothed indifferently. He staffed at least one of his plantations with twice as many men as women, from which it may be inferred that he did not much care whether his field hands were able to enjoy a normal family life. So this is a black slave master named Stanley. Stanley freed a few of his slaves, including two barbers. So Chef got free as a reward for long and faithful service of giving him that cut that Chef does. More frequently, by posting security bonds and serving as a guardian for minors, he assisted white slave holders who wanted to emancipate some of their slaves. So he would uh, assist them, right? At the peak of his prosperity in 1830, he owned three plantations containing 2,600 acres of land worked by 163 slaves, making him by far the largest African American slaveholder in the entire South. This Negro had 163 slaves, and he had uh, 2,600 acres of land. He had 40 acres in the mill. Stanley's business acumen and dignified behavior earned him acceptance to a point by the white community. When delegates to North Carolina Constitutional Convention 1835 debated whether to take the franchise away from free Negroes, one newspaper reportedly cleared that to do so would be highly unfair to men like John C. Stanley, poster boy, thus singling him out as an eminent representative of his case. The convention did not adopt the disfranchisement measure of taking slaves away from black folks. However, so Stanley had been okay. So then I could okay. Now watch this. This is the funny thing. This is the funny thing. So now it talks about his church life. Uh, okay. She was so instrumental in Stanley being allowed to purchase pews for his family in the New Bern First Presbyterian Church when it was constructed in 1822. An incident that illustrates Stanley's ambiguous social position, that he and his family were allowed to seat themselves in a sanctuary otherwise occupied by all white congregation, was an extraordinary privilege. But the Stanley family pews were located in a side aside at the back of the church. Thus, even though Stanley was one of the richest members of the congregation, positioning of his pews proclaimed that he was socially outranked by the nearest and poorest white pew holder. Although Stanley also benefited from his close association with certain whites, one such relationship cost him his fortune. Blah 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 blah. Um, Stanley had a barbershop chef like you. In 1840, Stanley had to close his barbershop. He had lost the majority of his land and owned only 7 slaves at the end of his period of slaving. I can go on and I can talk about other personalities, but the fact of the matter is, now here the black church is not culpable, right? Now, see,
Right.
it's Stanley as a black Christian.
But question.
Now is the black
Yeah,
barbershop.
like wait. Was he Christian or was he a slave owner? Because like, was he a Christian? Yes. Was he a slave owner driven by Christianity? I think it's we
Okay,
getting
wait,
we getting down in the weeds now. I mean, yeah,
no,
he was a
no, no,
Christian.
no. We're
Are you
not
saying John
getting
Carruthers?
down. You're
John
following
Carruthers Stanley, right? What's he talking about?
who?
John Carruthers Stanley. You said Stanley, but is the rest of his name John Carruthers?
Let me just check because I was where I was reading from. I wasn't reading from his name, so thanks for following. Let me
Yeah.
just get up to his name.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. He's one of the wealthiest free blacks in North Carolina and one of
Yes,
the largest black
so that
slaveholders.
would be so. Thanks for reading and checking. So
Okay.
but remember what I had said. I'm starting off with individuals and Christianity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then later in my debate, I get to the Black Christian Church and the ministers,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what I did is I showed off a narrative of individuals, and I
Right.
separate individuals from the church institution itself, and then I get into Black churches, right, and their participation in it, right?
Okay.
Um, and so it was a debate. So it was a long debate. And then I get into how Bessie and his revolution was almost was thwarted by the Negro Christians, right? And their participation in thwarting revolutions with people trying to get free. So generally, I just read this into the record to make my argument that when we deal with reparations, we have to know that, especially reparations against the white Christian church, who's more culpable, we
Mm-hmm.
have to understand that they will bring in this data, and we should be well read about this data so that we can have a point of view of what you're trying to do is separate the culpability. But the fact of the matter is, they are still liable. How much
Okay.
liable is in the arguments? Are they liable? Yes. It's like someone following somebody, somebody's gonna get hit, hit, shot, murdered, assassinated.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a woman who knows these people and is following them around. And when they get to a particular location, she makes a phone call to let them know, okay, he's here. Now she might have did
Mm-hmm.
that 7 times, but on the eighth time, that was the time in which they rolled up and shot the person. Now,
Right.
she didn't know what they were going to do. She had no idea. Her job was just to follow and just let them know where this dude was. Is she culpable? Yes. How much culpable? That just depends on the entire record. But the fact of the matter is, in my debate, I was given the record. So
Hmm.
that's a short answer away from what we were talking about culpability, which that could be decided among us. But if I don't read the record, right? If I don't read into the record, there would not be no argument. People would not know. But will people thank me for letting them know? Whether it's a little to do or it's much of a bigger problem, then can we just analyze it, right?
Right.
Reparations means repair. It doesn't. It means it could mean a payment for damages, but it could
Hmm.
be the simple fact that okay, the Catholic Church admits their role in slavery, right?
Right.
Is our black institution so righteous that they can't admit their role in removing black people from the culture of Africa? Are they so sacred to us that they get this pass? Well, that's up to scholars and that's up to the argument. But my job was to read it into the argument.
Um, I'm gonna give you a little bit of pushback.
Okay.
I accept that they did admit their role in slavery, but from what I understood just in conversations, I'll look it up in a second. That it was apology, but it was also with some kind of they admitted, but they were complicit. I get it, but there was some kind of clarity too that the teachings were wrong, in that some of the stuff, especially in regards to those papal bulls, um, that those were political tools at the time being dressed up as religion. So and that's what I was always taught. I'm familiar with the dumb
Okay,
diversus
it's
and all of
okay.
that.
I'm
Yeah,
not making I'm making listen, I'm reading into the
yeah.
record. I can read Cromwell,
No, no, I know
Alexander.
you are, but I'm saying, what do you think about what I just said in regards to that? Yes, I understand they were complicit. I'm not even
Okay.
removing them from it, but a lot of times that argument of the dumb diversus gets overused, in my opinion. Um,
Okay, but I'm not even in that period. I'm talking about American
okay. I thought
slavery.
when you said the Catholic
Right?
Church, I thought you were there. Okay, okay.
Now, Alexander Cromwell, who most Christians should know, like Richard Allen, these are you know, Alexander Cromwell was in 1853. Now, so this is when black folks were still enslaved, right? He
Hmm.
goes in a sermon, Hope for Africa, a sermon on behalf of the Ladies Negro Education Society, right? Cromwell said this: prior to the commencement of this century, the Negro race has been left in a state of almost absolute spiritual neglect. Along the whole line of the west coast of Africa, not a mission has been commenced to evangelizing nations. Not a spire pointing its silent finger with a heavily significant to the skies, heaven. The masses of the black population of America and the West Indians were in a state of heatheism, though surrounded by the Christian institutions of the whites. Both custom and law forbade the instruction of Negroes and superaided fear prevented the formation of schools. Nay, more than this, the conquerors of the black race were as yet undecided whether their bondsmen were capable of spiritual illumination or were heirs of immortality. The point of it is that Alexander Cromwell, he didn't respect African agency. He he said that even though these people were surrounded by white Christians, the black folks have been neglected for spiritual uh, advancement,
Hmm.
and so they should be Christianized. Now, that was the thinking that black folks were moving away and saw black folks as heathens. And there's a famous poem of oh of Phyllis Whitney. Uh, we um, uh, okay. She says let me just see. Let me just try to find it.
Logic, what you thinking
Uh,
on this? Hits?
uh, so my general point of it is my participation in history is to illuminate things that are not that are not well known, and that we should decide as a people how we should fix ourselves. So this is an internal situation. It's not an external situation. It's internal. But for people to go along and not look at the role of our own people moving us out of and separating ourselves from Africa, right? For the purposes of their strategy, for better, how can I say, better treatment by whites in America. Um, eh, my job as a historian is to bring this out. I don't know where the rest of I'm looking at my paper and I don't see where the rest of it is, because I talked about the Confederates, the Black Confederates. I don't know where that is. Let me just uh, yeah.
Good evening, yo. Can you hear me? What's up,
Yeah.
brother Reggie?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, man. It's Logic.
Hey, how you doing?
Um, I'm good, man. I'm good. So, a little bit of pushback, right? And I don't even really think it's pushback. More of an observation on the other side of like just watching you do it, and to be quite honest with you, like for the most part, cheering you on. I feel like when you talking like that, and you talking about that you love black people and you want to bring something to the table that you feel like support them, I can't be like that sound crazy, right? Like if anybody's saying out loud that that's what they want to do, I can't just be like that sounds crazy to me for somebody to want to do that. I actually, as you hear me say, I think that that's like a very noble cause, and it's a part of the reason why I'm here too. Like I think that conversation is like what brought me to feeling like these are people who actually give a damn about that particular thing. However, I saw some right. I saw people who was Egypt out, right? They was Hebrewed out, or they was something, right? Whatever they was doing, it was definitely something. It was more about this cultural expression, and it certainly wasn't. Out of all three of those things, there's no like underlying motivator to participate in that thing that they would be like attempting to resist against, right? Like so now, now it would bring you to, are you more trying to like preserve something like a particular way about going about this liberation, or are you just trying to like be as efficient as possible about the liberation, right? I think there's a conversation that it might not seem like that you're doing that, but by you leaning in this particular direction, you also would have to be encouraging, a particular type of solution for it, right? And every day it seems like we get on here and have to talk people off of a ledge, right? Of where that particular leaning seems to take them, right? Like you done did it and took it too far, but I'm really now trying to tell you the opposite of what, you know what I'm saying? All the stuff that brought
Well,
you
let me
here
let me let me
taught
add
you.
to a third points, because you're going to you're mixing in a lot of points. Okay, so um, as a researcher, more than a, if I said I was a historian, that would be incorrect. If I said I was a scholar, I would say I would be probably more of a researcher. You have never heard me push the Egyptian faith. I actually have debated Jabari and other Comedics on the Egyptian faith. True or not? Right? I know more about the subject than most people, right? I went to Egypt before these people were even thinking about going to Egypt. I went to Egypt in modern Egypt in '87. Right? I have never I've pushed terms like ma'at, which are philosophical terms, but not in a spiritual sense, right? So you have to separate me out. You have to actually separate me out from that, right? And believe it or not, neither did Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben never pushed no Egyptian. He pushed history, but not a belief in Egyptian. Uh, uh, Maybe the belief in Egyptian principles because that's a fact, but not necessarily God's. So you can push me out with that. My major role was has always since you probably met me on social media is to provide research, notes, facts, right? And those things are you can only dispute whether or not the person who made the fact is accurate or right, but my job is pretty much to give you the facts. Now, as far as where we go, I have always been an activist with my research. And so I've been deeply involved in reparations, right? Since my college days, but in 2001, I was able to testify at the town hall on reparations, right? So from 2001, I've been following it, and I know a lot of the personalities in reparations. This new group of people who are talking about reparations, Ados, Yvette Carnell, and uh, Tariq Nasheed, and even Ta-Nehisi Coates, right? Those groups of people are new to me. I knew the old people like Conyers and Congressman Conyers and Ron Daniels, Dr. Ronald Daniels, and the commissions. So much so that again I testified recently early this year, I think, on the New York State Commission of Reparations, where I actually know uh, the second in charge of the New York State commissions, right? And submitted my written testimony to her. I am not the people on YouTube, even though I'm on YouTube, but those people are largely nothing burgers because they're not part of any of the committees. They don't know any of the people. So please separate me out from the other people that you're examining, unless I said something that might be problematic. So I did know or hear or remember some type of attack about me and me living in the Bronx and knowing uh, uh, Bronx River and Bam. Why? Because I lived in the neighborhood and I took a content creator to Bronx River to meet Hassan Campbell because I am from the area and I know the area. And I also knew what the situations were. I didn't condone any of their activity, but I knew it existed. And if you ever heard me talk about it, one thing was uh, the the sexual conduct of men, that a lot of it was permissible, even though it was wrong, strange, freaky, crazy. It was permissible. Bambata was the first person to take you shopping for his needs. It was
What?
Bambata was the first person that would take you shopping. He would take you to Two Man's and Hosieries, let you buy whatever you want, to ask for what he wanted, right? And I think everybody in our communities growing up knew that. Now, if you was Ron
What's
Savage,
going
Reggie,
on?
Reggie,
Tell you the
you
truth.
know I asked you why you be sounding like a contradiction at times. Because like I ain't asked you I guess the question is kind of complicated. But I'm saying so like even when your answer, I heard you say something like you say my at times, right?
Yes.
Nah. So how do you take an unlearned person that you would be explaining this my concept to, and like expect them to be able to unwind all the other things that come with that? Like you'd have been better off just explaining the 42 laws to somebody, and maybe that, but like the
No,
fact that you
because
even
I
got to
don't live
continue
in.
on this label, like
No, because I
how
don't
can you say
live.
you're not doing it and like it's under the exact same thing?
I
You know
don't
what I'm saying?
understand why. I don't understand why you. Here's the thing: is it'd been better to let me finish than to interrupt me. But since you interrupted
I
me,
mean, I tried. I just heard somebody being on somebody's lap, and then I just had to say something. That's my bad. Like
no. But
I
I'm
felt
saying,
like me trying to stop you might have been good right there.
Sometimes you just let people just go, right? Sometimes you just gotta let them go, Logic, right?
right.
Okay,
So
I
the
guess I was
issue
tripping.
is,
I think this is one time where you sit back, you put your phone on mute, and you just let people go. You know what I mean?
My bad.
right. So here's the thing: is I said here's the thing is because I know most of you are not my friends, right? And you're looking for
I'm your
No, we
friend,
saying
Reggie.
that the Bronx. We saying that the Bronx is just wild.
it
The
is.
fact that
Like
I
that's
cut you off from
crazy.
talking about people sitting on Bamba's lap, I gotta be your friend, dog. That
No,
if
no,
that don't make
right,
me
right, because that was the Bronx. Because see,
Put you down.
what I know in my community was
The
Bam.
boogie down Bronx, right?
Right.
What I know in my community was Bam was the least of the problems in our community, as crazy as it might think. There were people coming out of the facilities, max, coming back
Mm,
into the project,
hmm
raping boys, raping people on the staircase, knowing full well that the person that they raped will never go to the police because that would be the end of their credibility, right? I know that for a fact, right? So, as you might in your wildest imagination think that Bam was the problem, Bam, at least for his whatever he was involved in, would give you a choice. Lots of you're not talking about the tens of thousands of women that were raped on the staircase, right? Nobody wants to talk about that, but they're so enamored about what was happening in Bronx River that you won't turn in fact and look at how many of the women were raped and they couldn't go to the police, right? This is the Bronx, no different than
What happened? Reggie, you good?
I think Reggie's phone, he must have gotten a bad area or something. He back now though. I don't know if he can hear,
Yeah.
but he had dropped off though.
Oh, Reggie.
Yeah.
I'm glad Brooklyn
Guys
wasn't
hear me
like that.
fine? Can you guys
What
hear me
happened,
West
fine?
Side.
Mika?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know who was speaking earlier, but they were talking about the differences even in America between South and North and black and white and rich and poor and all this, even within the same racial group,
I'm
right?
all over the place, boy. These conversations. One thing about these conversations, not to interrupt you, brother, I apologize. But
Uh-huh.
these conversations be everywhere. Like a person can come on talking about, Bambada, and then the next person come in talking about baseball, The next person to come in and talk about Egypt, you know what I mean? It just be wild to me. I don't know, is it just me or is this, do y'all be hearing the same thing?
No,
Everybody just go
Ain't
seamless.
no seamless transition.
Like they, and nobody says anything. They just go right on along with everything seamlessly. I be like, what the hell?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I hear you, brother. I'm finna
Right.
go ahead.
So,
I hear you.
No, hold on. Let Westside finish. Let Westside finish. And jump right back
No,
in.
I was
Reggie.
just
Go
I
ahead,
was just
Westside.
saying that I kind of agree with what that brother is saying, because and then someone earlier mentioned the us versus them dynamic, right? So we can always find something to divide on, right? But the reality is we have more in common than we have apart. But then you can always find that 1 or 2 or 10% that you disagree with someone on and focus hard on that. And so on the whole Pan-Africanism debate, right? Pan-Africanism is an idea, right? It's like racism, right? It's an idea. Now, some people act on that idea and they focus hard on what that particular difference, right? Now, the idea of Pan-Africanism, yes, it can have a lot of elements that are like pie in the sky, right? Just like the idea of racism has a lot of pie in the sky, right? But the idea of it, as long as you're not too exclusionary, where you're like looking at other groups and trying to exclude them or disconnect from them in some way, right? Make them less than human, essentially, right? The idea is not bad in the sense that it allows you to humanize people of your, say, racial group, maybe help them, hopefully they can help you. And it's been used in a sense too in history to help both Africa and Americans, right? Because at one point America was treating Black Americans a certain way and it looked funny globally, right? And so these people are coming to America as diplomats or whatever, and they're looking, and America is looking kind of bad, treating the American Blacks in a certain way, or Russia even used that, So I'm just saying that the idea itself is not necessarily bad. Now, the racist idea I would say is bad, right? But the idea of Pan-Africanism in itself, I wouldn't say is bad, as long as you focus on, because you're never going to solve 100% of the problems. Like, there's always going to be something you can divide on. There's always going to be problems to be fixed, whether you're here in America or Africa. So you can say, hey, I'm going to focus on America first. That's fine if that's what you want to do. But you can do both at the same time. It's like America with USAID. They're helping other countries. It's not that America doesn't have problems, right? But you're helping other countries so you can get some kind of a reciprocal benefit. That's what China is doing too, right? So I kind of just wanted to say that, and some of the points that people brought up earlier, just to kind of say what I agree with, I guess.
all right. So let me bring this back.
Soft power. You talking about soft power, bro?
Right, that's
That's
soft power
a
idea.
good point.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
So
point.
let me just bring this back. So in every issue, there are the other facts that people don't know about, right? And so the job of a researcher, or sometimes a job of a person who was just there in a particular situation like the Bronx, right? And if they was there, they have facts that you may not know, right? And while other people are directing you to look one way, there are other ways in which there's other information. So what I was going to go back to was, at first I was talking about this Egyptian stuff. I'm I'm a researcher in the field. Never told anybody to follow anything religiously. I separate me from all of that, right? Because I debate comedic people who I think that are misleading the people, right? Why? Because I was there first. I had great teachers, direct teachers, and I was talking about the Black church. They were explaining my situation on reparations, which not necessarily a payout, but a reconciliation between what the Black church did as far as separating people from Africa. And then, as another example, I talked about the Bronx, right? And some things about the Bronx, which I heard people in this chat say a long time ago, something about me and something that I might have said in the Bronx or something like that about the Bronx, and I was just trying to inform people that there are when you have the opportunity, you should listen to all the facts, and then understand, and then make your own decisions about the facts. So, and the last thing that I was talking about was this thing of Ma'at, um, and Ma'at and Ephet. That is just good and bad, right? You could use Egypt as a backdrop because they created concepts of order and chaos. There's chaos in our community. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get it ordered, and I don't have to use those ancient Egyptian terms. But when we're having these conversations, I'm asking you to look for as many facts that you can prove or you know who said it, right? To make your determination. So when I come on, I'm gonna try to give you facts. Now, you could dispute my facts. I have no problem with disputing my facts if you can dispute my facts. That's fine, right? So these are this is why I happen to be on, and I was on to really talk about the FBAs and the simple fact that what they're asking for can't be granted in the Constitution. So you have a full segment of materials that you could think about.
So that was so no, and I appreciate it. So back to the Bronx conversation. So I was the one, and I guess you would say this is before we knew each other. Um, I was the one that, before knowing you and talking to some other people in the community, you made a statement on Sonetta that bothered me. Now, coming in from the real world, um, I'm not old enough to know who Bambaataa is, but I'm old enough to know who Hassan Campbell is, and all the chaos in and around that. So I saw the show. Did I see this? No, I saw a clip first, and then I went and watched the show. And the kind of back and forth between you and Doggy Diamonds. Now, check. This is before I really knew you, but the statement that you made there, that would be me. Because one of the things that I had an issue with it, because one of the things that I had noticed coming into this community is that the sexual nature of some of the quote unquote most popular figures or leaders in the community, probably starting with Dr. York, going before Dr. York too. Some of the things that I was seeing, some of the most popular people in the community being some of the most vulgar sexually. I did a show about it. And one of the comments that you made really irritated me. And part of the reason I never brought it up to you was I spoke to some other people about you before I put a quote unquote jacket on you of supporting Bambaataa. So on that conversation, I know you're familiar with it with Doggy Diamonds. The nature of the show seemed to be trying to get to the bottom of things, kind of like bring things out in the open. And then you came on and you made some statements that just didn't make sense to me. Now, not knowing you, not knowing a lot about Bronx River at the time, I guess now they would make more sense. If you want to give clarity to them, that's fine. But just to let you know, just to get this out into the ether, one of the reasons I never brought it up to you is, and they'll tell you in here too, I'm very careful about a jacket I put on somebody, right? Like if I want to
But you did put a jacket on me.
yeah, well, I don't know, explain what you mean by that.
I mean, just listening to you, you did put a jacket on me because you said you was uncomfortable about some things that I said.
No. Okay, then let me explain what I mean by a jacket on you. A jacket on you would be me saying that you're a pedophile supporter, standing on that and never trying to get any kind of understanding. Let me explain to you another reason what I mean by jacket. recently Jay-Z got accused with Diddy of the unnamed, I'm pretty sure you're familiar, the unnamed 12-year-old girl that they did something with at a party, right? And in the Discord, crazy ass chef immediately throw him under the jail, and he's got to prove himself until he's guilty until proven innocent. And I said, you can't really throw that jacket on Jay-Z. I mean, give it time to see how this plays out, just because maybe that's what you want to do or it makes sense. And a lot of times in here, people will call people pedophiles before knowing anything. They'll do that. So what I did in that particular case was I took your statements at face value. Some of the stuff you said to me was kind of disturbing, but then I had conversations with other people that knew you personally, 2 or 3 people that really knew you. And then for a while, I wouldn't even get on. You didn't even know this because you didn't know who I was. You would get onto panels and I would get off the panel. And even after that,
everybody. You brass everybody.
No, I'm just
A
speaking
lot
me.
of people get
No,
on
no,
the panel.
no. I'm just saying for me. Because the only thing I can control barely is me. So then I had some other conversations with someone that was really close to you. And then I realized you were a child at the time. I'm familiar with Sex, Money, Murder. So if I'm aging this, you were a child at the time. And then on top of that, kind of listening to what you was even saying today, but this is before, I kind of realized that to try to hold you somehow accountable for what Bambaataa did or did not do to children would be reckless of me. So then I began to get on panels, and you come on a panel. I began to engage with you, began to talk to you, and since that time, you haven't shown me anything personal that would make me say, anything other. And then I move past it. I know in this community, Reggie, a lot of times everybody just starts with vigor and anger and venom. But in my particular case, I try to do things a little different. Because in this particular community, it's very dangerous to put a pedophile jacket on somebody because there's so many pedophiles in this community. There's so many sexual deviants in this community. Matter of fact, of this little online community, just based off of research, I did a show on sexual assault. I would say Dr. York is the beginning of the community, and he's one of the worst pedophiles in the history of the justice system. And there's a lot of people that's been on that land. There's a lot of people, his arms have, uh, uh, spider webbed all over this community. So you got the Dr. Yorks, you got the Polites. And then also, Reggie, another thing I'm realizing is I can't really vilify you for what you said that night. When I have videos also of Polite saying he doesn't care who, if his leader molested 100 boys or however many boys, he would still be his leader. And then this particular community still thirsting to see Polite at every debate and turning up for every show. So apparently in this particular community, it doesn't really matter in regards to that. If you're popular, they'll look past it.
No, it only matters when someone is trying to make cash apps, clicks, or giggles wants to do a show. That's the only time it matters. But real life stuff doesn't matter. I happen to still live in the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, some of the people that we talk about, I bump into them in neighborhood stores, right? Or I can bump into the bank, right? Or in a restaurant, right? I can live or die. So I'm am cautious about what I say. So when someone comes for me, if they want to talk first before they stab, shoot, right, or stomp you out, right? If we get to talk, what did I say? What did I say? But the biggest thing is keep my name out your effing mouth, right?
Right.
What you say. But in this particular situation, Ron Savage was very popular, was in my second and fourth grade class in S138. And when Ron was going to Bronx River, we told Ron, don't go, right? We told Ron, don't go. but he wanted to be something bigger than our block, so he went. And
Clarify
so
Bronx River. Clarify, because most people won't know outside of. I know what you mean, but I don't think a lot of everybody in the chat know what you mean by that.
Bronx
Don't
River
go
is
to Bronx River.
Bronx River is one of the several main projects in the Bronx that that is also connected to hip hop. So there, Bronx River is there's Sedgwick, and there's but that's on a whole nother side. And then there is this kind of like five or six projects, including Bronx River, Townview, Castle Hill,
Mm-hmm.
Row, Holgate. And then there's tenement areas, Watson, the Sound, this, what they call a Morrison Soundview area, right? And sorry, and there's Bronx. How could I forget Bronxdale? Bronxdale. So Bronxdale, Bronx River is probably the most important when it comes to hip hop. So they become very notable. And then there is Castle Hill, from where I'm from in Soundview, that is very notable for murder, right? Uh, those two places. So that's where I'm from. I'm from Castle Hill. So we would all intersect in parties, which you call hip hop parties or rap parties, hip hop parties, and during that time period. So that's where everybody from the projects would meet. We meet all those personalities. I know, for example, Bambata is because my upstairs neighbor from where I live, he was that dude that uh that how can I say, he was that dude that could intersect in every projects in a particular type of way without saying what type of particular type of way. But he was like my big brother. So then I met Bam through him, right? By going up to his, because Bam came to my projects to meet him, and and then everybody heard, and so we ran up to meet. We that's when, and I think I met Bam at 14 years old, right? So that's when I physically met him, and then I met him again when I got rolled up by his people when I was young, and they was gonna take me, my bike, and uh, my friend. I'm not gonna mention his name, but his brother was that dude, and uh, but we knew Bam, and Bam just said, "Yo, them dudes, leave them alone. They peoples of mine, right?" So, and then I met Bam later on in life in different circumstances. So and so these people I met. Now Ron Savage, again, we told Ron Savage, and this is when we were like 14, 15 years old, 16 years old, don't leave this block. You ain't got no protection. Ron left the block. Ron wound up in the situation that he's in, right? And a number of other people uh, left the block, and you're going into another neighborhood, and you get different type of pressures of life on you because you ain't got no protection. So I was just trying to tell a real life story of you know knowing people, right? Knowing these type of peoples, and also knowing what is really happening in the Bronx. And so sometimes it gets jumbled up, right? So I'm not protecting anybody. No, I'm not protecting anybody. On the contrary, I'm telling the conditions, and I'm also telling you that there were people in my neighborhoods that was far worse than the people that you think, but somebody wants to project them on social media, but they don't want to project the other people who are far, far worse, right? Uh, about what was happening on in our neighborhoods, right? And we're lucky, me and like General Yohana of ISUBK, we grew up. He grew up across the street from me. I knew him since 10th grade, right? I knew him before he would become the commander. He was a good dude, right? He was a good dude, but he wasn't involved in what I was involved in. He definitely wasn't involved in what I was involved in. So, but he was a real good dude, And so there you go. I know these people. But now when we get back to history, what we just try to do is try to take a point, and we should use facts to analyze anything historical. So I'll stop. But thanks for telling me that I almost got a jacket on me label. But how can I say?
coming from outside the community, Reggie, you don't understand, probably because you've been in the community so long, you don't understand how crazy this community looks to somebody coming into it. Pause. So at the end of the day, this was around the time of nature. I think it was the nature boy. I mean, it was like just over and over and over again. And then I became familiar with when the polite case started. That's when I became familiar with Dr. York. So then you start doing all of this, and I'm like, man, damn. And then I mean, because here's the thing. Even me being from outside the community, when you were speaking on it, it was kind of weird because the whole tenor of the show was one thing, and then you kind of brought more of like what you're doing today, kind of like bringing more of a well, this is what it was like on the ground, right? And one of the statements, because Cuban used to be in that, and I talked to him about it a few times, and one of the statements you made is like they were driving around in a van looking for kids, in that and I'm familiar with Sex Money Murder. I know you can't talk about it, but I'm just saying when you said your friends ran and they got your brother, so your older brother, something like that, and they just told Bam, you could do that shit wherever, just don't do it here. So when I was listening to that, right, from the outside looking in, we had a similar situation in Newark. I think if you live in the projects, you'll understand what I'm saying. The guy that's walking around that your parents tell you, you know, that he's like Jason or Michael Myers or something. But in actuality, when you become an adult, you realize he was like a molester or something like that, and that kids shouldn't be around him. In Jersey, we had the killer clown incident with the clowns driving around and stuff like that. So when you said that, it was so opposite of the tenor of the conversation. Now, this is in hindsight with some wisdom, not just being upset. It was so opposite of the conversation that they were having on that show. I understood. Now, this is where I would ask you. You would have to kind of understand where I'm coming from, because even Doggy Diamonds being in the community, you know, I don't know if y'all got something personal. I felt like him, like, you know, like based off what we're talking about, even if that is the case, like it was like the cookies on the bed. You know, if you took the cookies and all that and the other, as upset as he was at the time, and he's somebody who I don't know if he knows
You
what.
want to pick up Howie? You
All
can
right,
go
mute
get
up.
him now. I can
All right,
get him.
mute. All right, gangster.
Which part here go?
Yeah, he was just speaking perfect English a minute ago. The Doggy Diamond's anger, did you at least understand where Doggy, even if you maybe or maybe don't understand where I was coming from, did you understand where Doggy Diamonds was coming from at the
I think
in that moment?
Doggy Diamond spoke later about
Okay, then I don't want no private. You don't got to
similar.
give us like, yeah,
So
this private thing.
my whole point of it is, well, hold up. If you're talking about my neighborhood, uh, I mean, I don't know everything that happened in my neighborhood, but back then I knew a lot about what
Mm-hmm.
happened in my neighborhood. And you're
And
not
if
from
any
my
of this is private, you don't have to do this, Reggie.
neighborhood,
This
but
is
I'm
not
just saying, if you're not from my neighborhood,
right.
like I wouldn't be, I couldn't be informed about your neighborhood, but my
Right.
neighborhood I was pretty informed with.
Right.
So if you have a problem with something I said, I'm reachable. You can always contact me,
Right.
right? If you wanted to address me online, you can address me online like you were doing,
Right.
right? But to make any type of kind of assumption without talking to me, that's a complete another story.
Right.
So if you think I was condoning it, no, I was just trying to tell y'all all the real what would happen in my neighborhood. Look, what happened in my neighborhood, uh, behind the lights, cameras, and actions was far worse and what something that people are just bringing up to make an issue of, right?
Mm-hmm.
Far worse, right? Like one of the people I grew up with was a dude that was involved in Preacher's Crew,
Yep.
Black Hand Death,
Black
right?
hand. The black hand.
Yeah. So one of the people involved in that was one of the earliest people in my neighborhood that I knew that did hard time, right? And they could say whatever they want to say about that dude, right? Behind whatever they want to say, but he was in between life and death. You know, he was that dude, right? And they could say whatever they want to say and make all these little nitpicks, but I seen him at a funeral on my block, my neighborhood. He came right up to me and he gave me some pointers. And when you
Mm-hmm.
got somebody who's a real cat about being careful, right? I got to be careful, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't care about this YouTube stuff, and I don't care about all these fake tough dudes that are on YouTube with yippity yaps. I'm
Yep.
60 years old. I lived through that, right? Now, if I was your age, that's another story. But I'm just trying to tell you, since you're entering into worlds that you were not involved in,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there are people out here that can tell you a little bit more about that, then maybe you should shut the F up and you should listen, right? You really should, right? And maybe get the real story. Is everybody safe behind YouTube with these fake names, right? I'm not safe. I'm not safe, y'all, right? Uh, I use my real name. People know who I am, and I have
Yeah.
a video out called "Sex, Money, and Murder." I don't know if y'all have ever watched it. It's called "Sex, Money, and Murder." It's the prequel of "Sex, Money, and Murder." You go there, you go watch that video. I could go back to my block anytime, right? And my block appreciates me. They know me. If I mean the old dudes that I'm that generation, they know me. They respect me, right? Y'all, many of you people can't go back to your old block and get respect. They might know you, but I get respect on my own block, right? Because I was always Reg. I was always helpful. I sometimes involved them over my head, but now I cleaned up my life. I was able to clean up my life. In college. I was able to meet professors and work with them, change my whole life. Now I come back and I'm a middleman between another generation of the Bronx. I could when I want to I could talk about early hip hop, but I don't need to do that all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I was involved in another sector of it, right? And I can involve and but I also can talk about history because I got a historical education. So now we're talking about things like the FBA and why it's a scam. And I'm on a hot seat. I've been on a hot seat before with the Moors. I don't know if you ever seen the pressure that the Moors put on me. And you
Mm-mm.
know what the funny thing is? I went to the last Million Man March. Y'all want to hear this?
Yeah.
I went to the last Million Man March when I was having conflicts with the Moors. And uh, who was my escorts? They were members of formerly of the Crazy Eight, the Baby Crazy Eights, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Baby Crazy Eights in the Bronx, right? That's Chip, right? Chip and my other brother, right? And Todd, he's not here anymore, right? And I and no, I'm gonna stop there. But
Yeah.
they
I was
the
wondering how
Monroe
far you was
cats,
about to how far you was about to go.
yeah, these are
Yeah. Go
these
ahead.
are Monroe cats and Bronx River cats, right?
Mm-hmm.
So So that was my team, and my team was a hood team, right? Hood was a hood team against some people who were just upset that I was talking about not their leader. I would never talk about the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. I was talking about the issue that I was talking about, right?
Right.
So I'm not safe here, and I have been warned by some real good people to be careful when I talk to boards like this, right? What I'm just trying to say is, look, if you have a disagreement with me, let's talk about the disagreement. I give enough disagreements to talk about, right? And that and don't and just don't take me out of context unless I say something that's completely wild, and then you can ask me a question about it. So I'm here
Yeah.
today dealing with Shep, and Shep
Yeah.
is agreement with me. That's how I got on this board today. And I
Mhm.
brought in some old stuff that I know about just to address it. But then we can get back to business.
Yeah. And just for clarity, um, I'm not always going to. If I addressed everything I thought was wrong with the community, I wouldn't have any more time in the day. Um, if you would have said something personally about something that you did, I remember one of the one of them said that you got to remember there was a child, that you were a child at the time, and
You know, I was never a child. At 14 years old in Castle
yeah,
Closet,
you're
grown
still a
ass
grown man.
man.
I get it. No, listen, I grew up in the projects too, Reggie. I fully understand. My point is, um, I don't know you to put. I don't know you um to make that kind of decision on it myself. And you speak freely about it. So it is a little shocking. Like even in here today, you just started like you were talking and then you just went off into, the whatever conversation about Bambata earlier.
Because I
So
wanted to address something. So
no,
you
that's
got,
fine. Hold on, that's fine.
I,
What I'm
I
saying,
want to
hold
address
on. No,
something old.
that's fine. You don't gotta defend that. What I'm saying, and we understood it. What I'm saying is it's just you don't have to. You don't have to understand what I'm saying. It's a little off-putting for me. And it's not, but it's not something that I should hold against you because you're saying it. It's just off-putting for me. And it always will be. And even in the recent conversations that we've been having, thanks to Haskell, I don't know if he's in here, but um when we were talking about, and God forbid I don't want to go back down this road, about sacrificing things. I was in my mind, while everybody was kind of like going crazy about the overarching thing, it was just difficult for me to believe the black people was doing that, right? So I was like, the whole shit is wrong. But here I am taking communion, the biggest hypocrite in the world. Just took communion probably 3 days before that. Never even made the connection, right? And then once I learned about African spirituality, then I even had to humble myself out that in this community, it's probably just some things I don't know. So it's probably some things I just shouldn't say immediately and maybe take some thought, even if these are raw conversations. So, but I didn't want that. That's why I've never brought it up to you, because I don't think if somebody brought up to me something that I said on a show a long time ago and I didn't know them and they had no history where I'm from, don't know anything about me, this, that, and the other, and they made a personal judgment on their own to make their own personal decision and get over it in their own time, it seems kind of stupid to bring it up um,
No, but
later. So
sometimes
I'm
to bring
letting,
it up to fact find just to see what is can get out of the rumor mill and just to try to find out what's in a person's heart, how they
yeah,
articulate. So
yeah.
sometimes, right? And
I don't
so
really, I don't really move. I don't like
I
some
do.
in these communities. I move like that if I'm standing in front of you. In these particular communities, fact finds ends up in your mama's a bitch or you on crack or some shit like that. When you're trying to get clarity, you end up somewhere else. I know if I'm standing in front of you and you standing in front of me, at least we can come to some clarity as men. I don't think there's a lot of clarity to be had on the
Okay,
internet.
I got it.
So
So
yeah,
back to business. Back to
yeah.
business. Okay, so I gave you my synopsis of the uh, reparations for the black from the black church. It wasn't a total condemnation, but it was the fact of the matter is we have to deal with because these arguments will come up with reparations about how black folks owed black folks in America and etc. So at least you need to hear it for the first time and then you can digest it because it's going to be part of issues of attacks from conservative groups and other groups
Hmm.
about that. So better to at least begin to know about these things. And in fact, and these debates should be informative more so than they are ego boosting to bring out more facts on an argument, right? So that's just where that
We
is.
got members that, I mean, I could tell you, you already want to know. We got people in here that are FBA and ain't challenging a damn thing you saying. Like I'm not FBA, ADOS. I don't really, I'm whoever I am, but the fact that we have people in our own Discord not responding, I'll find you somebody to talk to.
Yeah, I
But
looked at you for a
yeah,
savior, and
yeah.
if he wants to talk to me, and certainly we've talked before,
Hmm.
I just don't think he's informed about law. I think he's more of informed about culture.
Cultural. Yeah,
Yeah, but
cultural.
that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking
No,
about
I'll find some law. I'm gonna find some people that can get you some have a good conversation because that's one of the things that I'd like to do different is when a person asks for what they want, right? Somebody in a law FBA conversation, and I
yeah,
just bring you some FBA nut, then y'all just gonna argue because you're gonna be talking about law. They're gonna be talking about belief and faith and culture and history, and I don't even when you look up FBA and ADOS, it says that ADOS is the more of the legal aspect and FBA is more the cultural aspect. That's what I was saying to you earlier. Maybe they come together and blend the best of both worlds. Well, I wouldn't even say the best, but blend both worlds in there. So once again, my open challenge to anybody in here with any pushback on his FBA comments, definitely unmute your mic and say something. I don't think everybody is at work on a Saturday. This ain't an open challenge, but uh, just a conversation because I'm sure there has to be FBA people in here, unless they're just not at Reggie's here, and then I would almost understand. So I'll find you somebody to talk to, Reggie.
yeah, they're not.
I think Reggie's argument yesterday was so well put together and coherent that I don't think many people have much arguing to do. Now they may feel like they disagree, but like when it comes to actually having a conversation, I don't think it's much to be said in opposition to what Reggie's position was yesterday. Me personally, that's just me personally.
I appreciate
I
that,
wasn't
Corey.
in here. I wasn't in here. What was the position, Corey, that you agreed with? I'm not trying to go
So
back to yesterday,
I
but what was
intended,
your take on it?
and this to qualify too, although I disagreed with C. Dot, I saw where he was coming from, and I loved his arguments. Right, he had very good arguments and very good pushback with him and Reggie. They had a real cordial conversation. It wasn't disrespectful. They brought knowledge. I like when conversations go where it ain't like, oh well, go bring me a source. Like they got the knowledge in their head, so when they needed to check each other, they would bring the information from off the top of their head. That's how a conversation's supposed to go, right? Because they would cite case laws and different things that they were doing yesterday. But anyway, to answer your question, to what Reggie was basically saying is, and I don't think he's saying totally like just nothing else, right? But what he's saying is basically we got a lot of issues and problems in our immediate community. And he talked about how the power is in the cities, right? we got a lot of black mayors, right? And they are mayors of major cities. You know what I mean? That gives the black community a lot of power. That's where our power is at. That's where the overwhelming vast majority of black people are, in the inner city. Houston, Texas is the most concentrated place of black people. That's the biggest concentrated population of black people in America. You know what I mean? And and controlling the city of Houston, right, is power. You know what I mean?
Real
So
power.
I think Reggie really laid his point down. Now I'm not probably doing it any justice, but he got real into detail with it, and he laid down some really good points. So, like I said, with the mayor, one of the points was the cities and the mayors. That was a great point. That really resonated with me. So, and then also, like I said, CDOT had a lot of things to say that resonated with me also. So I just wanted to put that out there to y'all, man.
Well, thank you, Corey.
I
And
wanted, and
I don't
just to highlight, just to be fair, Reggie, real quick, I want to highlight one of the things that CDOT said that resonated with me. He talked about how we should be aligned with those farmers, right? In different countries, you know what I mean? And you know, not being, he said, he also said the way that, like, when Africans come over here, we don't really invite them in. We really standoffish with them. I, like I said, I can witness it firsthand. I have it in my own family. Like, my part of my family is immigrants, right? And you can even see in my own family where you got, like me, like people who's born here, and then people that immigrated here is like it's standoffish. Like, it's not the same relationship that we have, and I think CDOT bringing that up was a good point. Though we not as welcoming to those African immigrants as we probably should be. You know what I'm saying? So that was one of the things that
and vice
resonated.
versa, even though I'm now sounding like FBA, we're
Mhm.
not necessarily uh, welcomed anywhere else outside of America. There's xenophobia everywhere. So
Absolutely,
my
yeah.
issue was that uh, my issue is that generally personal relationships are personal relationships. What we're talking about is empowerment. And I think that we need to focus on uh, don't scapegoat immigrants, but focus on the ills of Black America and fix those things. I don't have to be a Pan Africanist. I don't have to be a what else they call, yeah, Pan African. I'm more focused on Black America, fixing Black America, so that we are strong, and then nothing else matters if we are strong. But because we're so divided, state against state, city against city, right, block against block, we need to address that before we address anything else, right? And we haven't been successful in addressing our own disunity over BS, over geographical places. So dealing with Africa is a whole nother world. So we can expect Africanism or Pan Africanism and all of that stuff. But these FBA people, they're not only attacking immigrants, they're attacking Pan Africanists, and they're attacking our own elected officials. They're attacking everybody for what? Everybody that's black. So it seems to me that they need to take the black out the FBA name and just keep the F, right? Because they're attacking all of our black elected officials and just calling them Democrats when they're really black people using a political strategy, right? And that's all they are. But they want to attack our black. So how are you going to get anything if you attack your black elected officials? Now you're just dumb.
Reggie,
Any pushback on that? Yes.
I have these conversations with I have conversations with people all the time. I kind of more agree with what you're saying. And I have conversations with people that are FBA or identify with that moniker, and they will say things like, the politicians ain't do nothing, or they won't do it. We won't get reparations, for instance, through the political system, through the political process, right? And so they write that off, and then they will say things like, no one really helped us when we were going through what we were going through. They're not looking at the fact that there was television during Martin Luther King, and that being broadcast around the world helped to change things here too, right? And so it's an interesting thing because people
None of
believe
them
what they
was
believe,
there.
and
None of these suckers was there during the assassination of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. They was in their dirty diapers. So why are they talking about us? Why don't they just talk about when they came along in the 80s, in the 80s and the 90s, right? So they reach too far to be talking about people that they shouldn't be talking about because that's their parents' people. I'd rather listen to their damn parents because I'm 60. I'm 60. I was born in 65, so I was born after a month after Malcolm was assassinated, and 3 years later, when King was assassinated, I was 3 or 4 years old. Now I'm arguing with people. What are they? Time warp Negroes? They weren't there and not affiliated with any
but
organization.
but Reggie, simultaneously, right? I mean, it goes back to we believe what we believe. You know what I mean? And the brother that spoke just before we was discussing with you, he says he's being a hypocrite in some things, right? He mentioned being a hypocrite himself, right? When he said something about mass, right? And so that's what we're facing is like we're all like hypocrites to a degree, and so
I'm calling them on their hypocrisy, right? Now speaking for the masses of young black people and misinforming them about history when they was in their dirty diapers when black folks was really making achievements. They come along after the crack and the cocaine and the crack, the Contra wars, right? So they don't know what it was for black unity and black love and even when we lost many of the activities and how the black community tried to. It was in their generation. It's in their generation that we've suffered a big disconnect. They don't get to talk about my parents' generation. They don't get to talk about my generation. They get to talk about.
but at the same time is the information is out there, right? Because you have books. You don't have to be in a place or at a time to talk about that time. If you read enough or you listen to people from
They
that
ain't
time
reading.
enough or whatever to see what they're experiencing, right?
They're not reading.
And so this is the thing, but at the same time too, it's also the leader of the movement, the leaders of the movements, those movements that are using it as a us versus them type of deal to where they're using these people, they're using their platform. I look at it mainly as entertainment, essentially, right? They're just entertaining, right? But then they
Correct.
have a certain number of people that buy into the idea. You see what I'm saying? And these people, sometimes they buy into the idea wholeheartedly, as if, you know, Black America is perfect or if Africa is perfect. Because even what the brother mentioned a second ago, where he said that, you know, sometimes Black Americans don't accept the Africans in when they come here, right? But also, I also hear people that I talk to say vice versa, right? And it might be that you might think you're getting slighted by someone, but they might not be slighting you. They might be coming here on a mission like, yo, I'm gonna come here, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. I don't have time to do some of the other stuff, right? Now, that might not be the way to the right move because, you know, we're social animals. We should be communicating as much as possible with each other. But you might feel like the person's dissing you when it's just that they're just on their own mission, you know? And so, but the people that are running these movements are kind of leading some of these people that might have a predisposition to some of these hostile ideas or being hostile to others down this path, you know?
Hey,
And
hey,
honestly, I'm gonna
hold
tell
on.
you the truth, man.
Real quick, I gotta show DQ this. Where DQ is you available just to look at the phone, right? I know you showed me some exotic shit the other day, right? I'm gonna get this on camera. Hey, look at this shit, DQ. Mike Epps shit, dog. The bobblehead. The bobblehead with the killer on the inside, bro. That shit wild as hell, man. Anyway, Calvin Johnson just plugged me in with this shit for crazy shit, bro.
Yeah, my theory is, man, that and I got it from multiple sources, but like a Dr. Bandy Lee online, where she talks about how we're influenced by other people more than we think, right? And I think that our current president is one of the reasons why this ideas have always existed, but I think he helped to blow it up because of his rhetoric, the way he was talking about immigrants and things like that, that us versus them is heavy in how he operates. And so it kind of gave impetus, it gave people the freedom in a sense then to say certain things that they would normally say, generally speaking. It kind of helped to blow up some of these movements. It's just that in our section of in our race, it's like we instead of going at the power structure, right, like a Martin and a Malcolm was doing, right, they were going more at the power structure. These guys now are going more at the people that have some of the least amount of power in the country, especially if you're a legal immigrant. You can't vote, you really have no rights, right? You know what I mean? But if you're even as an immigrant, in a sense, your population is really not that massive, but they're kind of focusing on that. Meanwhile, the people that are running the country, they're focusing on everybody that's not within certain groups, right, to a degree, right? And so it's kind of a weird deal right now.
Okay, so then you're supposed to analyze it, and I think that you're analyzing it, and or trying to tease out areas in which we are going to organize. I mean, or analyze. So that's just how the discussion should start, is to lay out areas in which we need to think about to assess if one person or a group is accurate about what they're doing and what are their goals are, right? And so that is just
Right.
part of the process. And so that's why, I come on these boards because I look for a process. And what is your goal? What is
Right.
your methodology? I'll stop.
Right. Yeah, even your Black City plan, right? I love the idea of the Black City plan, right? But if you listen to the rhetoric coming from the people that are running the politics, like the president or the people that are around him, right? They're saying things like the Democratic cities. They don't say Republican states, right? Because a lot of these places are run by Republicans, right? The governor, right? They say Democratic cities are some of the worst and this and that. They'll mention Baltimore, Chicago, and they'll mention the mayors, right? But the reality of the situation is a lot of the funding for these cities, I'd have to get into the weeds. You might know more than I do, but sometimes this funding is coming from the governor, from the state itself, to fix the roads, to provide things for the school, apart from property taxes, right? You
So
also
it's,
have federal funding, right, that
it's
comes to the
actually
state. How does
coming.
that distribute it?
It's actually coming from the city's tax rolls, right? The cities are
Right.
the veins of the body of the United States. That's where they extract the dollars from, right? The cities, you live,
Mm.
die, get married, you work, you do all of that in the cities. Cities is where the commerce is. The governor, he's in charge of all of the cities and counties in there, right? And he gets to manipulate the process, right? And then he also gets to talk to the federal for additional funds. But every city in every state is its own entity. That's why we have what you call the union. The monies that they extract a lot of money from a huge amount of money from black cities, right? Because in fact these are urban centers where a lot of commerce, because we are the consumers. We are some of the biggest consumers. We don't save, we buy, right? And so our tax dollars are being unfortunately redirected away from us because we have the inability to hold our city officials accountable.
Now, so I agree with you, but I'd have to get into the numbers again, right? Because yes, the city has a tax base, right? But there's also funding that comes like when they pass the infrastructure bill, right? Or like they pass TARP or whatever they pass. Some of this money's coming federally, going to maybe because a lot of times they give the power to the state to allocate that money, right? But on top of that, now you look at Chicago, for instance, right? Chicago has lost population, the city itself, over a period of time, right? So that's like a losing of a tax base too over a period of time. And so you look at Memphis. Memphis is like 80-some% black. And so the thing is like, yeah, there are problems that exist, and some of it's deeper than you or individually or even as a group, even as a city might be able to address in a sense, right? But at the same time, some of the fundamental or some of the basic things is, I think, is what you'd have to really get under control, in the sense that no matter how poor you are, for instance, right? If wherever you live is safe, right? And people feel like they can come there and visit and be safe and not get harmed, right? In some way, right? They will come there. And that in itself can generate economic activity, right? But but then that kind of comes down to like, how can you get people to, I personally think what it is you got to have an idea of like a contentment, in a sense, right? Not to say that you don't want to move ahead, right, or get further along in life, but you got to be content sometimes where you are, so that you don't envy the other person or grudge the other person or become hostile towards the other person because you don't have, right? And so hopefully that over time can build more of a community type thing where you can kind of, you know, quell some of the violence and be able to work together in certain ways, you know.
Well, I think that you're giving a pathway for people to kind of break out some of the things that you're saying and study it. But as far as cities is concerned, counties, I've kind of studied that, and I studied reparations, right? Uh, Probably more so than, believe it or not, I study ancient history. So
Right.
where there are um, large communities, whether they're white, black, or Latino, they're in the cities. And the cities is, again, it's the veins that lead up to the federal government. They get their money, they get their money last. Cities get their money every day in um, fines, meters, right? Things like that, bridges, right? They get their money in spending. They get their money every day, right? The federal government gets their money once a once a year, right? In what you call federal taxes, right? And so the cities and states and counties, they deliver tax rolls up to the federal government. But inside where the possibilities are is in the cities, and that's why current president is now he's going after powers of the cities. He's actually invading cities, right? And it's a policy thing, and you have to look at why might he be doing it, right? Uh, there
How
might
you
be
doing?
good and bad, but you have to understand that the fact of the matter is that in his mind, he's the individual that controls all of America. He's the last stop, unlike other presidents. So he's taking a direct presidential approach into things that other presidents would just leave up to the governors, right? He's like, no, I'm going to take a direct approach and make my presence known, which there's constitutional questions, but uh, there's constitutional questions, but we won't see those for years later. Right now, he's taking an active role. So going into DC, and I think he's going into Chicago, and he really wants to come into New York, right? Uh, but he's taking a direct, real approach about controlling economics, controlling policing, controlling things that he sees as fit out his window. And that's really not up to us. But what we need to do is find structures to shield us when those things affect us affect us negatively in our communities. But in order to do that, we must first fix our goddamn communities, right? And that's
Yeah,
and
yeah, Reggie, and
uh,
those things are gonna overwhelmingly. Those things that you mentioned are overwhelmingly gonna affect the black community. You know what I
Uh,
mean? The
right.
with the president, throwing his weight around in these cities, right? You can already see it in DC, where um, it's just basically a show. He ain't really cracking down on. I mean, I guess if the army is in town, I'm sure motherfuckers ain't gonna be out murdering each other, of course, right? But he talked to the local people talk about the relationship that the police have been building with the community over these past 30 years, because in the past 30 years the crime rate has been going down. Now they hadn't eliminated the crime rate, right? But there has been a cut in crime, and the like I said, the local authorities are doing relationship building as part of the mitigation of the crime. You know what I'm saying? So
Correct. You're
what's
correct.
happening is they diminishing that relationship building that's been done over a 30-year period is being thrown out the window in a 1 week period. So yeah, definitely we get affected by that. But go ahead, Reggie.
No, so all of these are these levels and these factors that I think boards like this can address if we stop falling into the trap of what we can't do and what we should be doing, and where are their plans talking about getting the best benefits of it, instead of focusing on dividing immigrants and dividing black politicians who work hard to make these things happen, as if they haven't had success, which they have had success, right? It's not optimum because there's other forces going on. We have to understand that drug money from the Contra period has been a kind of Christmas present to America, to to special interests, right? It's been it's this unfortunately, drugs in our urban communities has driven a lot, is completely involved in a lot of commerce, new stores opening up, right? As people convert from bad dealings to legitimate businesses, and it's a benefit. So they want to say cut down on the crime, but if you look at how the government was involved in the Contra, it was the government itself with Freeway Rick Ross and stuff like that, and all of this that was was making it happen, right? Whatever that pilot was, what's that pilot that was working uh, for the cartels, that was dropping loads and loads of cocaine? They made a movie about it. Um, Tom Cruise, I don't know if it was Tom Cruise or something. I think it was played in that movie. Um, uh, yeah, yeah. Sometimes we are misdirected. We think that we're the problem, but the problem is being pushed in it because we our urban centers get a reaction uh, to to these unseen policies that we could fix ourselves. We don't have to use drugs. We don't have to use drugs, right? But drug use is actually being on one side as a national and a statewide uh, uh, prohibition, right? But actually, the states and cities and states and the federal government benefit from our drug use and the rest of our advices, right? The crimes, if the crimes reduce, then guess what? The court system doesn't work. The court system has to work, right? So there has to be crime. It has to be chaos in this country. Some of the structures in this country to work, there has to be crime, drugs, murder, right? Fraud. It has to work to uphold some of the institutions that we think are on our side. It has to be, right? And that's the unfortunate thing. But there's an answer to that. But sometimes we cross the line in the response, the proper response that we should have, right? We actually cross. We fight the things that we shouldn't fight instead of dealing with the things that we can deal with. and so when you study cities and counties and you study this, urban dominance, right? And we pull it as of 2025, cities account for around 50% of global consumer spending, despite less than 1% of the world's land area. And we're not just talking about the United States, we're just talking about cities. The share is expected to climb at 83%. Cities are where the people are, right? Total top spending cities. U.S. cities remain global leaders in consumer spending. By 2040, 6 U.S. cities are expected to rank among the highest spending urban centers in the world, with cities like New York, Los Angeles projected to remain at the top in terms of total consumer expenditures. Major Sunbelt cities such as Dallas and Houston are also rising in the rankings due to population influx and economic diversification. Well, in the cities that I just talked about, we're in those cities and we can and we have what you call a black tax, right? And we got to get hold of making this work for us instead of paying attention to even reparations, right? And certainly against black immigrants, right? Those are the facts. Now, if you want to be sleepy on the wheel, and if you just want to be angry, and if you want to be on the bandwagon, then you're on a bandwagon. You're part of the problem because you're not thinking. We have the best technology to find the facts that we've ever had, and yet we act dumb.
Those are definitely the facts, Reggie. You spitting real game. I want to ask you though, Reggie, because we had a if I'm honest, we had a kind of conversation about this a little earlier before you was on the panel. I think it was a whole different Discord. I'm not even sure, but what I was thinking is because I've heard your Black City plan before, and so I think like you and today like you kind of thinking in a different manner. Now, are you planning to kind of revise that um to line up kind of what you're thinking right now, or are you just discarding that, or do I just totally misunderstand and this is the part of your Black City plan?
It's part of my Black City plan, and my Black City plan was open source, meaning that it wasn't meant to just mark one period. It's able to adjust, and it's able to adjust for different cities. Circumstances and cities change. But the overwhelming fact of the matter is our power lies within our cities and counties, right? And that and that part hasn't changed. What is
Absolutely.
changed is new technology and how it impacts the workforce in those particular cities, and drugs and health and other things that are external that happen. But the fact of the matter is that cities are our lifeblood, is the biggest power that we have that we don't understand because we're distracted on dealing with things. And I think that's what you were saying, and Brass is saying, and Logic was saying, and my other brother was just speaking and saying, uh, generally, there are real conversations that we could have, right? Um, some of these conversations are entrees to having conversations, real conversations. But the fact of the matter is, the real failure is, and I think this FBA stuff and this ADO states, is because there are a lot of people who are involved in this, the new hot shit, right? Is to address what are they really asking for? Are they really asking for the government to create a welfare bureau for us, or to give us, or to give us what we're owed? And why should this one generation, right, receive how will it affect us if there's no plan for the future generations? How will that affect this a financial payout? What are they asking, and how are they asking it? Or are they scamming? And they're scamming to me because they don't have a plan. You ask them for a plan, They don't. They're not one of them. Not one of these FBA people or even ADOS people have a real plan for our people.
Well, let me ask you this, Reggie, because I think we're having a good conversation, and I want this is the conversation that I want to continue in different forms and on different levels, and there's different topics within this conversation, right? But what I want to ask is, you hear things, Reggie, like, well, the black community has purchasing power. It's like 1.8 trillion dollars, right? And you'll hear that if we were our own country, we'd have an economic just behind Russia and just above Mexico, right?
Right.
Um, two questions. I guess it's a two-part question. Is there any validity to that, Reggie? And if there is validity to that, how does that? How can we uh, use that purchasing power in a sensible way, not um, in some pie in the sky black buy a black city type deal, right? But actually participating in the trade and commerce that goes on within America, even internationally, on a up and up, on a legitimate basis. Like, you know what I'm saying? How can we gather that, or at least some of that, and kind of throw some weight around, or show power or force by using that, they say 1.8 trillion, Reggie.
We have to get out of some of the conversations that we're having, right?
Mm,
Hebrew Israelite conversations, right? All of that junk, right? And well, we're saving black people's lives, right?
right,
No,
right.
morality is the key to it. No, we are some of the most talented. We have so many people who are college educated people that look like us who can't find a job, right? And don't know how because of the current situation, right? Our municipalities, we have to extend it past you know uh, eh, uh, what do they do? Sanitation, they do police, they do ticketing, right? We have to use our cities to have cities create an arm of revenue capture, right? So that it can go back to what city planning is instead of what cities are currently doing. Uh, they're
I
not into
love
business.
that term. Not to interrupt, Reggie, but I really love that term, and that's a term that I've probably heard maybe one other time in my whole life, is revenue capture, right?
Yeah,
Arms of revenue capture. That's a key term. And but the thing is, though, Reggie, there are arms of revenue capture, right? But those arms of revenue capture go to redistribute uh, the revenue, or the community's money, to some other community, or to some
exactly.
other. Right,
So let's
right.
name what
So
it
we
is.
we get police giving doing traffic stop on ticket duty, right? They send them out on ticket duty to the poor community, which is
Exactly.
wild as fuck to me. I just don't understand that, Reggie. But that's a good point, to the revenue capture. That's a
Because
really good point. Go ahead with that, though, Reggie.
what happens is
Mhm.
in our cities that are not well planned, corporations that are how can I say, sometimes multinational, but sometimes you know, multi United States, they come in and they capture the revenue. So our weak cities, when I mean weak, is not well planned, but are revenue generators, right? what happens is the corporations come in and they steal the revenue of the cities, and they don't bring it back to the cities. They bring it back into their stockholders. They bring it back into the things that increasing their revenue lines. So we have when you see these big corporations, you see like Uber in our community, and you see what do you call it, Uber, let's say uh Walmart, right, coming into our cities. What they're doing is capturing our money, and we don't ever see that money again. Whereas the city now could say, we already license cars in our city, right? Every, in our state, but particularly in our city, right? What we're going to do is Uber. You can't come into our city. You're going to have to license your product to us. We don't want you in our city, right? Now, why? Cities can do that, and they do that under things like residential laws, right? Whereas,
and at least I would say, Reggie, maybe we don't want to like kick them out, but like, bro, you got to give us at least 40% of that. Like, if
exactly,
Uber, okay, yeah, like that's where I'm at with it. I don't want to be so bold as to scare the business away. You know what I'm saying? Because it's an opportunity for the community. Any commerce is an opportunity for the community, but we need some of that. If you put a data center, just like I'm building one of them data centers out here in a rural community, right? And they're siphoning water from these folks' wells and shit like that. But the community ain't nothing they can do, right? But it should be something set up to where that, bro, listen, you coming up in this motherfucker, we got to have 40% of that data center. You know what
exactly.
I'm saying?
Our
Mhm.
cities become the big homies, right? It
Yeah,
becomes
yeah.
it becomes our big homies. You want to
Mhm.
do something in my city and you want to feed off of yourself, then if we're not going to take your business, you're going to pay us, right? But what
Right.
happens is we don't watch our elected officials and they take the bribes. Ultimately,
Absolutely.
a lot of them get caught and marched into court, dog walked, but they take the bribes because they don't think nobody's watching. But they let them take the bribes. This is what they do to them.
Well,
They let them,
I think Reggie, to be fair to the to the elected officials, right? I think the community is miss or disinformed, right, or not informed at all, right?
Mhm.
And so that elected official is backed into a corner where he don't have nowhere to turn when them people come. You
Well,
know what I
he
mean?
isolates himself from our community, and what happens? Like I'm in New York with this Eric Adams, right? Almost everybody on his board got indicted, right? But he's not indicted, right? He was
Yeah.
saved by President Trump. What?
He was
Okay, so
he was indicted, but he was what do you call
yeah,
that?
yeah, commuted or they stopped the justice. Why? So the issue
Yeah.
is, so the
Pardoned. He pardoned him. He pardoned him or whatever. Yeah.
right, and he's
Go
still
ahead.
running,
Yeah.
and he's still running. Okay, so what I found in New York City is that they make the elected officials break the law. Then then what they do is they blackmail them. And that happens in almost every city. You want to be elected, well,
Yeah.
you gotta get this money amount of money up, and they make them break the law, and then they're basically like, okay, we own you. Get a knock on the door, a phone call. We own you. You're gonna have to do what we say, or we're gonna release them.
Or
And
they
so
do like Pete Buttigieg, right, where he resisted a lot, right? But
yes,
they ruined him until he straightened out and got on and got his act together. But they definitely because Pete Buttigieg was the mayor of my city, and he was pretty good at first, but then they got a hold of him and
yeah, they
ran
got
him
to
through
you.
the ringer. Yeah,
So
yeah,
that becomes a problem. And so what you have to understand that these people criminalize our elected officials and hold it up against them, right? But we
Mhm.
have to get back to what we were talking about, revenue capture, and we have to be cautious of these international companies. Like, for example, what business is McDonald's in? And I know a lot of you know. McDonald's Corporation, what business is
Real
it?
estate, real estate.
Thank you very much. What business is universities in? Columbia, Yale, right? Ivy League schools. What business are they into?
I know the big Ivy League school here in my town is they are into real estate, basically.
There you go.
For the most
There
part,
you
yeah.
right twice, right? So they're able to use the roles of tuition, these very expensive tuitions to capture land. Enormous amount. They're able to buy out land and they become the landowner, the land the business the landowners for the businesses. So many businesses. Do you know how many businesses sit on McDonald's land? How many businesses sit on Ivy League school land? They're able with capital from their students to buy up America, right? Okay, so that's one thing that, and then they do eminent domain. They will go and find a black community that's and then they or some other group will put a stadium, right? We need a new stadium. So they will destroy the black land, or they'll run a highway through the land, right? Or a new roadway through the land, right through a black community, right? And so these are the things that we want
And
to.
you know, I see it firsthand. I
I
actually
know.
build it. You know what I'm saying? I actually build the shit. They had a housing a low income housing area close by the University of Notre Dame, and yeah, right now the softball girls practice. That's their practice facility right there,
Mhm.
where you know what I mean. So yeah, I see that all, and it's the eminent though. They do it through the eminent. Just what you said, Reggie. Through the eminent domain is how they do it, right?
Yeah.
They and how it's crazy because um they'll underfund or under allocate
Uh-huh.
funds, right? And then those buildings, those low income
Oh,
housing
Corey,
units.
you can stop. You can stop. You don't have to say too much because you're right in the thick of it. So
Uh-huh.
you just smile, right? So these are the things that are happening, but our city officials have control of this, but they find themselves on the payola because instead of us marching for murder, we need to march on these particular policies, which we don't. And so other revenue captures have already planned this 20 years. Right? They've already planned on it for 20 years, and
Right.
we we are sitting there on the porch, right? And we see it happening, but we don't want to be. But we concerned about the immigrants. Like, how stupid are we, right? And they're gonna go through. They're gonna take your house. Look at Detroit, underfunded. They waited for
The guy
Detroit.
that's land the guy we worried about the guy that's in a cell with aluminum foil blanket without a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. We worried about him. He the one who gonna ruin our lives. Yeah, that's wild. I call that 3 car money though,
Uh,
Reggie.
uh,
That's 3 car money to me. But
it
yeah,
is
go ahead.
red, red, black, black. Pick the red. I mean, pick the black, not the red, right? Watch the red, not the black, right? All of that, right? So now Detroit. Well, how important is Detroit? Formerly, it was one of the industrial cities of all of America, but Detroit is very close to Canada. So it's already set aside to be a new city for commerce or connected to Canada, right? It has a deep water port, one of the deep water ports on the East Coast, Detroit and Newark, right? The ocean liners can come on shipping tank containers. They go from other countries can land right in Detroit. But we won't see any of it because we're looking at the wrong thing. So all of this stuff right here and all these groups of people, they're calling Brother Reggie an agent. I
Hell,
know.
Baltimore, Reggie. They got one of the biggest shipping ports, in the world, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like everything comes through Baltimore. Everything comes through those ports. So
Exactly.
yeah,
So why can't these cities where these people are versus jobs? The second is these cities can be like to cut out the middleman and say, listen, where are you coming from? Right? Can we do business with this country? Right? But we're not. We're listening to FBA and ADOS and we're back in the Stone Age listening to these people who are well, Yvette and Tone they're smart. I think that they know the deal. FBA people, uh, 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 I'm ready. I'm just saying to FBA people, yo, I'm on these platforms. You don't want me to be on these platforms, but I am. But leapfrog, leap, right? Because I can show you how you misdirecting our people because you don't even have a plan to talk about these things. So with that said, we could talk all. I'm glad that we're in a good footing. It's just that when me studying history, I studied ancient cities, Greek cities, and African nomes and stuff like that. And like I came up with cities are the heart of countries. You want to defeat a country. What you do is you take their major cities. You bomb, you take over their major cities, you own that country because the cities are the lifeblood. So if an invading population wants to control your whole shit, they're going to take your major cities. Now with us, we have an obligation to retake our own cities where we're living in, right? So we don't need no waiting for whether or not America gets forgets its sins and wants to give us a payout. We need to focus like the other immigrant populations and stuff like that on making our own payout, de facto reparations, rather than waiting for the government, the criminal, to come in and say, okay, we're gonna give every black family $10,000. You happy? Like that's stupid. And so if this is the best that we can produce, and at the same time it means castigating other black people, right? And not us trying to figure out how we can use those people, right? Then we are in the Stone Age. We stupid. So I think listen, is I've been on this for 3-4 hours. Uh I do have a Cash App. If somebody could post it or anything like that, it's Cash App, Reginald Mabry. I would appreciate it. And it's not for necessarily for me personally, but it does help me. It's because I really like to engage with real ideas. And now I'm finding out that we are being too focused on the scamming of reparations. Reparations is being used as a scam instead of doing things that we have some of the best thinkers. I argue with Corey all the time on Black Egypt and whatever the case, but I'm not arguing with him today on the simple fact that Corey knows more about infrastructure and economics than a lot of you. I'm not going to argue with Corey on that. We can have discussions on, but I'm not going to argue with him on that, right? But if we're arguing on things that really don't matter, right, then we're going to have some silly, stupid arguments.